Next one, we'll talk about Minnesota and the
Here we
Cincinnati Bengals. Kirk Cousins, one of Kyle's favorite players in the entire NFL, going up against Joe Burrow. If we take a look across the board, 3s and 48s. Now, I got to tell you, in the new age of the NFL, as I like to say, it's usually a points league. But I have to be honest with you here. Is that 48 making sense to you early in the week? It seems a little bit high for me to get 50 points out of these two. Joe Burrow coming back. Minnesota, we know, is going to have a decent defense on the road. -3 towards the Minnesota Vikings. Dalvin Cook, the one thing that we know, Kyle, he's coming in healthy. It's a 3-point line here. Is anybody looking Bengals opening day saying that's an upset?
I actually know a couple guys doing it, and I'm like, I don't think you saw the details of what happened here. So for me, this is the most incorrect and improperly priced line on the entire board. It really is. So let's talk about the Minnesota Vikings. I don't love Kirk Cousins. Everyone knows it. He's, as far as I'm concerned, one of the most overrated players ever. He stinks against winning teams. Obviously, there's a little bit of risk with him because apparently he's completely anti-vax, which you never want from your quarterback on your football team. So if you bet it now and then Kirk Cousins is out, it could be trouble for the Vikings. I still like I just think the Vikings, I don't like to use the word lock, but my favorite play of the week, it has been for months now, is this Vikings -3. So let's talk about the Bengals. They're getting Joe Burrow back after that gruesome injury. Didn't play the entire preseason, of course. The Vikings were a terrible defense last year. Their secondary was awful. Cam Dantzler, Jeff Gladney, etc. They went out and addressed that situation. They brought in Bashaud Breeland from Kansas City. Even though Patrick Mahomes' salary or new contract doesn't start this year, he's only making $7.4 million this year. I think this was probably the first cap casualty of the Patrick Mahomes contract. Bashaud Breeland replacing Jeff Gladney is a massive upgrade. Patrick Peterson, who's not the best corner in the league anymore, but he's certainly better than anything Cam Dantzler or even Xavier Rhodes in his last year in Minnesota was doing. They bolstered the secondary. They locked up Danielle Hunter. They brought back Everson Griffin. This defense, I actually think on paper, if you look at it right now, the Minnesota Vikings have a chance to be a top 10 defense in the league. Then you flip this over to the Cincinnati Bengals. They had one good defensive player on their team, only one. His name was William Jackson III. They let him go, and he is now starting in Washington. So when you look at this secondary for the Bengals in week 1, it's going to be, they just announced today that Trey Waynes will not be there, former Viking, ironically enough, will not be there. So Eli Apple is going to be starting opposite of Chidobe Awuzie and Darius Phillips. This might be the worst secondary trio in the National Football League. Houston, Vegas, and Jacksonville may have something to say about that, but this is a very bad secondary. Absolutely no pass rushers to speak of. They allowed the 6th most fantasy points to running backs last year. The Vikings offense should be able to move the ball up and down the field, and the Vikings defense is very good. I like the Vikings here. I expect this line to move. I would bet the Vikings legitimately right now up to 7. So if I'm getting that at less than half of that, it's my favorite play of the week. I think the Vikings roll here. I've already got a bet in on it, a substantial one online. I'll be doing cash bets in Vegas on this. I think the Vikings, despite Kirk Cousins, roll. They roll all the way. They have advantages up and down the board.
Now, see, the interesting part about this is because I do think the over is a little inflated, but the reason I'm coming in behind that is just because it's opening day, and yeah, Kirk Cousins, we can't trust him maybe or not. But I look at two of the worst secondaries, at least grade-wise last year, coming into this game. I mean, Breeland, 57th out of 121 corners. Alexander, 63rd. Patrick Peterson, 83rd out of 121 rated quarterbacks.
And it's still way better than what they had last year. Still way better. I do think they play. Just the veterans are going to know where to be. When you watch the Vikings last year, they were just lost. They released Jeff Gladney. They just got rid of this kid who they spent a high draft pick on. So I think that veteran sort of leadership and the improved pass rush. You're also going to have Harrison Smith back, who's their best safety, one of the best safeties in football. He's healthy and ready to go. As bad, even if they play to that ranking, they're still better than Chidobe Awuzie, Mike Hilton in the slot. Mike Hilton's one of the worst slot cover corners I've ever seen. You'll see him try to come up and play the run a lot. They have nobody who can cover anyone. Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen should absolutely dominate this week. And for you DFS players, Kirk Cousins is a decent DraftKings play at a lower price this week. I know it's Kirk Cousins and I hate him, but this is a great matchup for that offense.
Now, here's an interesting one as well, because, we're picking on that secondary a little bit for the Vikings, but There's not a lot of resistance. Now, Hendrickson was a nice pickup for Cincinnati as a pass rusher on the outside. Hubbard's decent. But outside of that, Bates is a very good safety as well. But I don't know how they keep up, though. I don't know how they keep up. You have two legitimate wide receivers, a good offensive line. Kirk Cousins, say what you want about him. We don't like him in big game situations, but he is a stat guy during the regular season. And
Exactly.
if Dalvin Cook gets to the starting gate healthy, which he did, and gets 20 touches, that's going to be fun to watch. Because, Kyle, I'm taking a look here at Bet365, which have all the odds up at the same time for the team totals to keep it easy. Minnesota Vikings, 25.5. The Bengals, 22.5. 26 points out of the Vikings. It could be doable, but I just need to say, like, if this was week 3 and I saw 2 weeks, Kyle, like, let's jump the gun, let's just hammer this. But it's so hard to do. I want to, like, hold myself back so I don't, sort of get tripped up in that aspect and say, hey, I really wanted to go in and, level the boom on this one here. But that's that game. It should be very interesting to watch.